My son kind of back talked to him. He took him up against the wall off of his feet. CPS came out and CPS interviewed all three of us together.
Just for the listeners who might just tuned in, they might be a little slow, they ain't picking all the pieces up. How did that conversation go?
Everything's fine. No, that didn't happen.
And who was saying that?
We followed his lead. We had both been told what was to be discussed and what was not to be discussed, and what goes on in this effing house stays in this effing house. Here in Texas, there are laws against marital rape. Here was this person who really, really loved me for the first time in my life, and I just wanted that. I had said no too many times, to where there was one particular time where I had continued to say no, but it wasn't happening. And so my insides were ripped open. And I had to go to the hospital and have an emergency surgery. No means no, regardless of marital status, regardless of relationship status. My no was never respected. I knew there were 3 concussions that happened, but even that, the promises and the lies, and I fell for all of it because I just wanted to be loved. It doesn't even have to be a physical touch, like putting their hands on you. In 2008, we moved to Texas. Texas is a very right to bear arms state. Before I left, it was up to 7 firearms, legal and illegal. The abuser used to pull it out, point it at me, and cock it out, or set it down on a table in front of me so that it was pointing at me. He never laid a hand on me in those situations, right? That's abuse. I would be afraid, I would be terrified, and it would be turned and manipulated in. All of that was abuse. He never laid a hand on me in any of those situations, but the threat of violence, the threat of being unsafe, the threat of having your rights taken away, your safety taken away, your space taken away. Like, people need to understand, it's not just the laying a hand on. That's where I look back and realize that had I loved myself more back then, I would not have tolerated that. You know what? Looking back at it now, I can identify every single red flag. But when I was in it, no clue, none whatsoever.
What's up, beautiful people? It's your favorite light, MB. Welcome to another episode of the Confidence Way podcast, where we are shining light on the darkness that is domestic violence and abuse. We got 3 simple goals: educate, empower, and encourage. We are here to educate anyone who has never experienced domestic violence and doesn't understand the complexities and what abuse can look like in different settings, or perhaps you have experienced abuse and you just didn't know it. We are here to empower all of our survivors to share your story without shame, fear, guilt, or judgment, because your words have power and your voice needs to be heard. And we are here to encourage anyone who is currently suffering in silence. Listen, you are not alone. You are not crazy. Abuse is not normal. Your feelings are valid, and despite what it may feel and look like in this present moment, there is a way out, and there's always support. Now let's go and jump in this thing, because it's time to rise above these insecurities, release the burdens of shame and guilt, and revive our God-given power, purpose, and passion the confidence way. So we about to light it up. Welcome to the show, Unbreakable. Y'all, this episode is going to be bananas. She is the most amazing, healed, strong, courageous supporter, all things that you need in your corner. This is she, and she is that. Miss Unbreakable, how you doing, sis?
I am good. I am so glad to be here with you. I am glad to support raising our voices together and getting out there as far as we can for as many victims and survivors who need it.
Amen. So before we even hop into that part, this is gonna be a segue. Tell everybody how you came up with the name Unbreakable, and talk to us a little bit about that.
So Unbreakable started, I got out January 5th, 2019. and not even recognizing that what I had gone through was abuse. Therapy, she didn't want to say, she, gave me time to process and get through. But what I started realizing was a lot of what was online, I was really starting to see and hear. It's like, wait a minute, that but that's what I went through. You mean it was the realization. And so I literally started collecting just memes and posting them on a page. I had started with, I don't even remember the name of it. I was technologically challenged. I created a page, and the abuser found it during court and brought it up during court. It's like, okay, shut that down. And I started Unbreakable and Uplifting, got myself all, locked down so nobody could see that it was me. Unbreakable came about because this one tried, and every other abuser in my life tried so hard to break me. And I think that's a commonality with all of them, right? They try so hard to break us. And I'm like, no. Even back then, even in the midst of horrible depression, a vicious divorce fight, custody battle, I'm like, I'm not going to let them win. I'm not going to let them win. I'm going to be unbreakable. And with that, it's like, okay, but I also don't want the negativity of the anger showing. So it's like, okay, well, maybe I need to continue to uplift myself. Unbreakable and Uplifting began as my journal. I don't journal. I don't journal. That was my healing journal. And so it was a reminder to myself that I'm not going to be broken, and I'm going to keep pressing forwards because there's so much more out there for me that I need to keep lifting myself up when I'm at the very bottom. That's where Unbreakable and Uplifting came from, and it organically manifested into what it is today. I've never paid for an ad, not one. So I don't know how 1.6 million came about, other than I get on camera and I speak the truth. So that's the story of Unbreakable and Uplifting.
And that is amazing. And I have to I need to slow us down real quick because you said something really important in everything that you just said. And it really stood out to me. So in case y'all missed it, we about to hit this thing in reverse. You started a previous page. Was that page under your name?
No, I had come up with a name for it. I don't even recall what it was to this day, but I didn't know how to put the settings so that I could remain kind of incognito. So when you would search it, you could see that my personal name was the one who was running that page. That's when, yeah, no, we're going to shut that down, and we're going to do one that's kind of more on the DL.
Okay. So then we moved to the DL page. Homeboy brought up the first page in court. All right. So he brought up the first page in court to use that against you. How?
I also write, and I was journaling some of what I was going through. I was journaling what my feelings were. I was journaling certain instances or encounters that we were having, custody exchanges, or, whatever he was doing at that particular time. So he took that and tried to say defamation of character during court. Now, mind you, this person's name was never mentioned whatsoever. And if you look up defamation in the dictionary, defamation means that it has to be a lie. But none of it was. And I've never spoken a lie about my story. So I, of course, having just been recently out, was still fearful, was still afraid he was going to take my child. I'm going to take everything from you. I was still in such fear that I shut it down right away, and then started the one that was a little more on the down low.
Y'all, do y'all see this? Are y'all picking this up? Because number one, she's the one that experienced. How long were y'all in a relationship, or how long were y'all married?
15 years.
Okay. So Unbreakable was married to Homeboy for 15 years, which means she was experiencing the abuse most likely the full 15 years. Then homeboy decides to come up in court with with a page that doesn't even mention his name, but because he's convicted of everything that's being said, because that's exactly what he did, he's using that as defamation of character. This isn't even the point that I wanted to bring up. This is not. But do y'all see how manipulative and how strategic they are? Because not even if he doesn't get what he wanted to get from bringing that up, he gets what he wants to get, which is I'm controlling the narrative and I'm going to make you wait for the results that you want, even if I can't have the results that I want.
Well, it was to silence me, keep me quiet. I had been quiet all those years, and this was just another attempt at keeping me quiet.
Facts. Because a voice is powerful, and a strong voice can change the nation. And that's what they don't want. But the point I actually wanted to get to, God dog it, y'all. That point I actually wanted to get to was the fact that Unbreakable is showing up in court. She's not only has she had to experience 15 years of this abuse that we're going to get in today, she has to go through the process of court. And this is fresh off the bat. So the emotions are still fresh. Like she said, the fear is still fresh. You don't know. They're unpredictable. They're predictable and then they're unpredictable. And you don't know which one you're going to get. She still has to show up in court, but she has to not have the audacity to be angry and show the anger of what she's experienced for 15 years for fear of it changing the narrative so that she loses access and custody to her own child. Do y'all see what's happening? The person that has been abused has to be the one to maintain the utmost prestigious character and express no negative emotion of 15 years of abuse simply because that could be used against her in a court case.
Exactly.
So I just needed to touch on that really quick because that's how the relationships go. Even when people say, well, why don't you just call the police? There are so many reasons why you don't. And people don't understand. But we're going to get into all that. We're getting into all that today. So now, was this homeboy, because you said this one, how many times, or I guess I want to backtrack it all the way back. When was the first time you experienced abuse and what was that like for you?
I am a survivor of childhood abuse from my parents. I am a survivor of religious abuse from my parents. I am a survivor of childhood molestation from a family member. Being raised in that environment, of course, that's all I know. So I actually was involved in 2 abusive marriages. My first one being my daughter's father. He was more of the physical abuse, 3 concussions out of that one. And so when I got out of that one, still not really understanding just the different facets of abuse and you know that abuse is not just physical. I thought, oh, okay, I'm good, I'm out, I'm safe. But then met my son's father many years later, and very seldom did he put his hands on me. So it was difficult to identify what I was going through in that one. So it's been a lifelong journey, lifelong of just trauma and abuse. I'm suicide attempt survivor. You know, been there, done that. I've got the brownie badge. So
not the brownie badge.
And I can laugh about it now. And these are none of these are to minimize any of them, right? But with healing, and what I really liked about watching your podcast is with healing, I'm able to look back on a lot of these things that no longer trigger me, that I've dealt with and processed with my therapist. And it's like, okay, well, that happened, you know. So I'm at a point in a lot of situations and a lot of my past where it's like, it happened. All right. Duh. You know, I'm so pretty. That's normally what I say. You know, we get to that point, but it does take a lot of time.
It does take a lot of time. But when you can get to that point, when you start seeing glimpses of that point, that is a sure sign that you are on your way. And
Mhm.
one thing that helped me through after I left the year that I went hermit mode, I hid, I didn't tell friends. Friends and family didn't know that I had moved back in with my dad and my kids. They thought I was still with homeboy. But one thing that helped me through that was I received a word, and it was, this is only a season. And once I held on to that, and
Mhm.
once I acknowledged that my expectations of his actions shouldn't be anything greater than what he's shown me his actions will be, I could laugh in the midst of craziness happening. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I just started saying, oh, this is just more seasoning for the story. It's more
Mhm.
seasoning for the story. So when you can progress past the emotional triggers, even if it's the smallest thing, hold on to that hope to let you know that there is always light at the end of the tunnel as long as you keep pressing forward, because we don't know how long the season will be, but it's only a season.
Only,
It
yeah.
is only a season. So you said, man, that's tough. Parents, religious, that's a lot. That's for a whole nother episode. Got
We'll have to do a series, girl.
Dang.
Yeah.
So and like you said, guys, the fact that we can bring our joy into this is like, it feels so good to me, because this is what I want these episodes and this show to represent, is that there's joy on the other side. And the best part of your life is once you make the decision to leave and stay gone. It might be scary in the moment, but there's
Mhm.
joy on the other end.
Mhm.
So let's go back to your son's father.
Mhm.
Um, what was that like? You said that it was a physically abusive relationship.
My
Your
daughter's father.
daughter's, I'm sorry,
Mhm.
daughter's father, the first
Yeah.
homeboy.
Mhm.
Were were you able to see any signs before y'all got into a relationship or before y'all got married, or was it kind of one of those, I got her
There
locked down now?
there were signs, there was gaslighting, and there was love bombing. I had no clue what either of those terms were. So I knew I was 19 when we met. I was still living with my parents. I had graduated high school, was going to college, was working. And here's this person who's just coming in with just love, 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 love. It's like, okay. So I missed all of that. It very quickly escalated. I very quickly saw firsthand the drug and alcohol abuse. I very quickly saw firsthand the rage, the abuse towards animals. But I was just like, I don't know what's going on here. We got married in June of 90. My daughter was born in June of 91. And so very quickly after we got married, I was pregnant. It's like, oh, well, I have to stay with this person. Very young, very naive, and not understanding that every part of what I was going through was abuse. I knew there were three concussions that happened, but even that, the promises and the lies, and I fell for all of it because I just wanted to be loved. Here was this person who really, really loved me for the first time in my life, and I just wanted that. I wanted to feel that back. Um, I didn't understand any of it. I knew I had been physically abused. Looking back at it now, I can identify every single red flag. But when I was in it, no clue, none whatsoever.
So let's get, before we tap on the red flags, I want to make sure that we help educate the listeners. So we
Mm.
got love bombing and we got gaslighting, and those are terms that are really popular now, but a lot of people still don't know what they mean. So how would you define both of those?
So the love bombing right off the bat was wanted to spend time with me all the time. I was their everything. If I didn't, that was back before cell phones. Back before, I think it was back before cell phones. And so, if I didn't, answer the phone when the phone rang, or if I wasn't available on the time that he wanted to spend with me, then he would play the guilt. It would be the guilt. Oh, and the I missed you, and I just want to see you. You're the most important thing in the world to me. And of course, I'm a dry sponge, and I'm just like, okay, yes, I'll do anything you want me to do. Um, it's it's just this barrage of emotions and love and attention and affection and not recognizing, I think, and this is where we get caught and where it gets called love bombing, is we don't realize that it is only, the hook and reel. That's all it is. So those are some of the things that I saw. I know there was a period of time where I had, I don't know, I woke up with a kink in my neck or something. And my parents had taken me to the doctors and some pulled muscle or something. And they had given me medication, what is it, muscle relaxer and painkiller. Well, it had knocked me out for like 3 days. Oh, he shows up at my parents' house banging on the door because he hadn't been able to talk to me for 3 days, hadn't been able to see me for 3 days. And they're like, dude, you need to, like, she's been sick. Like, you need to back down. You need to relax. And I was just like, oh, that's so sweet. He was so worried about me. Totally missed it.
Now, how long had y'all known each other? Because it sounds like since you were still at your parents' house, y'all weren't engaged or married yet.
Mm-mm,
How long had
mm-mm.
y'all known each other before that kind of needy attention from you was really, really like showing up?
I think we had known each other 9 months before we got married, and it was probably month 2. Yeah. Once he realized that the interest was there, oh yeah, then it just came full force. Yeah,
And that,
he waited a little bit. The second one didn't. The second one was right off the bat. Oh, it was, yeah, but
dang it. Okay.
mhm.
I told y'all it was going to be a ride. I told you it was going to be a ride. Listen. Okay, so let's make sure that y'all understand what's happening here. It looks like love. It looks like attention. It looks like the thing that you want because they're seeking the person who is the dry sponge. They got some kind of sensor. We're giving off some kind of energy, and they're heat seeking it. Like
Mm-hmm.
they know who to test and who not to test. And when they test you, and they're like, "Oh yeah, she's or he soaking it in, soaking it in."
Mm-hmm.
It's the thing. It's not that part. It's the part when their energy and their attitude changes because they couldn't reach you
Right,
or because you go out of town and you're not there with them on their terms.
right.
I need y'all to hold on to that. Like that's a nugget I need y'all to put in y'all's pocket. If you're going through anything like that, be very careful. And
Here's an example of where, looking back, where I realized where I got caught. Having been raised the way that I was raised, knowing that, there was this toxicity in my family, not understanding the abuse of it, but knowing that I didn't want to be like them. So here comes this person, and they're like showing all of this interest and all of this affection. And then they play the manipulation card. Well, I missed you so much, and it just hurt me so bad. Childhood dysfunction in my little brain at that point was, I don't want them to hurt like that. I don't want to be that person who causes them that pain. So let me try harder and do what it is that they're asking me to do, right? We don't want people to feel what we felt in the past. So we overcompensate. I overcompensated.
it's real easy to do. It's real easy to get caught up in that. So y'all get engaged. Y'all know each other for 9 months. Y'all get engaged. Y'all get married, and your daughter comes a year later. But
Mm-hmm.
you said that you noticed signs of alcohol abuse, drug abuse, animal abuse before you got married or just early on?
So here's the situation. Here's where part of the religious abuse came in. Um, I don't normally get into religion. Everybody has their own opinions, but I had been living with my parents up until that point at 19 years old. And from there decided, well, I'm going to go live with my boyfriend. He was my boyfriend at that time. Um, major attacks from my parents, my parental figures, because that's not the way we raised you. Okay, 2 weeks later, we went and got married at the courthouse because then it would be accepted by my parents. So there was no engagement. We moved in together. 2 weeks later, we went and got married. Once we were living together, 24/7, essentially, before after work, once we were living together, that's when I started seeing, okay, he doesn't just like enjoy partying. Like, no, he's getting stumbling drunk and he's a very mean drunk. Um, so of course, you try to have the conversation, hey, you kind of scared me with that. And oh, I'm sorry, it'll never happen again. But then it continues to happen and it gets progressively worse.
So what I'm hearing is, in your mind, because you are now married and you've got the covenant of marriage, and the once you get married, this is it, through thick and thin, through blah, whether you said vows or not, that's what
Mhm.
is set up in our brains. That's why you didn't leave when you started seeing the alcohol abuse signs.
Mhm. Yeah. Here I had just, suffered more religious abuse from my parents that you can't live with, someone unless you're married. Okay, well, there's that I have to deal with. Okay, now I'm married. Well, when you get married, you stay married. Well, then there's that religious abuse coming at me, oh, well, the church believes this. It's like, okay, well, I have to stay and I have to make this work because clearly there's something wrong with me if it's not working.
Did
Yeah.
he ever use religion on you to make you
He did
feel
not.
okay?
He did not. No.
That was just all the pressure from your upbringing, your childhood, and your parents.
Hmm.
Okay. Was he a religious person?
Um, no, not really. He was raised that way, but no, not day to day.
Okay. So now you're living with him, and there's the alcohol abuse. Your daughter's on her way. Had he, because what I've been learning and what I've been reading is that a lot of times once the woman is pregnant or with child, it the chance of being abused increases like crazy, which is bananas to me, but it does. Did you notice that in your own situation?
Yeah. Yeah. There was a knockdown drag out fight one time. I can't even say it was knockdown drag out. He had come up behind me and was trying to choke me. And I was like trying to get away. And so I was trying to push back and ended up throwing his tush through the wall, put a nice, butt size hole in the wall in our apartment. It was, yeah, it went from bad to worse. Now the concussions didn't happen until after my daughter was born.
Do you remember what triggered him coming up behind you and trying to choke you?
I don't, I don't recall.
But you were pregnant.
Hmm.
Prior to being pregnant, though, had he put his hands on you?
No.
Let me tell y'all something. We haven't had this conversation, okay? I'm just asking questions. So y'all
Hmm.
can see I just made a statement, and she has been with this dude, I mean, almost a year at least at this point, never put his hands on her, even when he was mean drunk. Never
Hmm.
hands on her. But I don't know what it is. I haven't studied the psychology behind it. But when you're pregnant and you're in a relationship that is dangerous and unhealthy, understand that the likelihood of it escalating to physical violence and abuse is growing every single day.
Yes.
That's bananas.
Yeah.
So when that happened the very first time, do you remember how you felt? What you were thinking?
Terrified. Completely terrified. But again, there's this little voice inside my head going, everybody has problems. You need to work it out. You committed to this marriage. You've got a child on the way. This whole conversation going on from these records from how I was raised that it's like, okay, well, I'll behave. I'll be better next time. I don't even know what the heck I did, but I'll be better next time. So, starting to, and this happens, I think, to a lot of us, is we start to change who we are, or we start to lose who we are because we want to conform and we want everything to be calm and peaceful. So whatever it takes to keep everything calm and peaceful, we'll do it. I did it. I would anything. It didn't matter. I'll do whatever you ask me to do, even if it's something that I normally wouldn't want to do, just so that I can maintain that calm and peace. Because that's when we're happy, and I want that happy.
And the crazy thing is, when you're saying maintaining the calm and peace, that's code word, guys, for survival mode.
Correct.
Because there is never any calm and peace, because in your brain, you've already experienced so much and you have no idea when you're going to experience so much again, that even though on the outside it looks like it's calm and peaceful, the inside of our minds are frantic, are concerned, are looking for the other shoe to drop. So people get in that situation, and those outside factors of what we think other people are going to think about our decision. What are we going to do with the as a single mom? This isn't right. This is all of these things that we grew up being taught, that we're not even considering the fact that it's not our fault that we're in this situation, other than our choice to be there. But we are taking on the pressure and the responsibility and the burdens and the guilt and shame because of someone else's actions. And so we're triggering survival mode, and we're triggering, if I can just maintain, if I can just stay in this lane. But what you have to understand, to anyone who is there in survival mode right now, that you think is calm and peaceful and happy place, all you're doing is making it challenging, or making him more creative as to why he or she should get abusive again.
Oh, yeah.
Because I can remember, and I don't know if you shared this thought, I can remember thinking over and over again, I will never be good enough for you. You say you want it this way, I'm trying to do it this way. There was one time, Unbreakable, there was one time when I can remember, because we both lost our mothers before we met each other. And I can remember him telling me about his mom. He was like, I just wish you would talk to me like my mom would, just talk to me in this way. So there was a time that I said, I remember that conversation, and I did just that. I said, talk to him like a mom would talk. His immediate response to me was, don't talk to me like that. You're not my mother. So if you're in a situation right now and you feel and you think there's nothing I will ever do to be good enough, you're correct. You will never be good enough. And it's not because you're not good enough. It's not because you're not worthy. It's not because you're not deserving. It's because they're broken. They have trauma that they haven't healed from. And the only way to numb it is to hurt someone else.
It's the dangling carrot. Just when you think you're going to get that carrot, the carrot gets moved out further and further and further. You will never get the carrot.
I
And
just
that's a tactic. That's their tactic. That's their intent, is to make you constantly strive to change, to be better, to behave, whatever it is, whatever verbiage that they use. They want you in that constant state of insanity, because in that cycle that we get into, they have more control. And that's all it's about.
That's all it's about. Side note, when you were telling me about the dangling carrot, when you're talking about that, all I could see in my mind was the little man with the fishing pole and the dollar. And he's like, you got to be quicker than that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
You'll never be quicker
mm-hmm.
than that.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So the abuse starts after you get pregnant. But you didn't suffer any concussions until after your daughter was born. So let's fast forward to this level, because you did say it's just gradually escalating, right? It goes from a choke behind the neck to something more serious. Did you know the signs of the concussion to know that it was a concussion, or did you actually go to the hospital and you were medically evaluated?
I went to the hospital 3 times and I was medically evaluated. And back then, you would think that after the second concussion, they would say something, especially after the third concussion, you would think that they would say something. Um, no, I went to the doctors, and every time I fell.
Did you take yourself, or was he there with you?
I took myself.
You took yourself to the doctor. You said you fell. They assessed you. They diagnosed a concussion. There were no questions or concerns.
I think the third time, if I'm remembering correctly, they asked me if I felt unsafe at home. And I said no.
And why did you say no?
He was in the military. I didn't want him to get in trouble and lose his job. And then, we lose our family, we lose our money, like, all of these fearful things that they inflict upon us if we ever speak up. I believed it.
That's the pressure that we as a community, as human beings, have to understand. Because
Mhm.
it's easy to stand on the outside of an experience that you've never experienced and be quick to judge without sympathy, without, oh, she must want to be hurt. Oh, he must like being abused. Nobody likes it. Nobody wants it, but it's a mind game. And once you're in so far, you feel trapped. You feel like you can't get out to the point that you're lying. I haven't looked up the statistics, which I need to do, but I believe that most people who have been abused lie about it. Their
Well,
shame,
we're
there's
told it was our fault. Well, why would I want to go to the hospital and say, well, I deserved it. Here's what I did. Why would I want to admit whatever it was that I did, which there is nothing that is justified abuse. There is nothing that will justify somebody putting a hand on you, male or female. Why would I want to go and admit, oh, I'm the screwed up one, even though we're not? We are the victims. We are suffering with whatever story they want to tell us to justify what they did to us, but we believe it. So I, I don't like admitting mistakes. At least back then, I didn't want to admit that there was something wrong with me or something flawed or that I did something to make him mad. That would make me the bad person. So we lie. We cover it up.
so we lie. And that's the pressure,
Mhm.
because you flat out said that no, I don't feel unsafe, because you are convinced that you saying that would cause pain, hurt, damage, defamation, whatever else, and taint his character and taint who he presents himself to be in the public
Mhm.
eye when
Mhm.
he's already responsible for tainting his character with his actions.
Mhm. Or the fear of it could have been worse. If I say something, it could have been worse. It could be worse if there's a next time.
That part.
Mhm.
Oh my goodness. Because I don't know, I don't know why, because it's not like before I experienced what I experienced that I ever was really into understanding abuse and domestic violence. But there was something inside of me that said, don't tell, because you don't know if telling is going to resolve the issue. And if it doesn't, and you put that homeboy through that embarrassment and that public shame, because please believe we are told we have to honor them in public. We have to make them, we have to submit to these people. The fear of it not helping us is so great that we take our chance to lie and stay longer.
Exactly.
3 concussions.
Mhm.
What was it? Before I ask the next question, did your daughter ever witness any of the physical abuse?
See, I can't say no, but when I left the first time, she was under 2. So the likelihood, she had to have seen something and it had to have affected her. But the likelihood of her remembering it is very slim.
So you left the first time.
Mhm.
Why did you leave and where did you go?
It was after the third concussion, and I want to say that he left. Um, And then I got my own place. That's all
So
I can remember.
when you say he left, was it one of those he just storms out the door type and you expected him to come back, or he went and got his own place?
He was in the military, so he moved in on base. He moved to base.
Okay. Okay. And was there any thought that once he moved in on base that y'all would get back together?
Initially, no, but then of course the love bombing starts again, the promises start again, and I want to believe it. I want to believe that he's going to change. So I would let him back and let him back and let him back.
It's the hope of what could be outshining what actually is.
Right. It's the fairy tale that we fall in love with. And we want that fairy tale, even though the fairy tale was just that. It was a fairy tale that we were promised. I didn't recognize that that's what it was. Like I thought that was truth, and I thought I had to work towards that. I thought I had to keep being, the good wife and the good mother and do everything that I'm told in order to attain that dangling carrot.
Has he ever served overseas?
He never went overseas, no.
Okay. And I wanted to ask that question specifically because I'm coming across so many people who have been abused by people in the military. And it's easy for the audience to assume when you hear he was in the military that he's suffering from PTSD from being overseas in a war zone.
Mhm.
I just want there to be clarity here. Yes, there may be PTSD from traumas that he experienced in the past, but he did not abuse Unbreakable because of something he dealt with overseas.
Mhm.
So we're going to take that excuse off the table right now because there are a lot of people who are in the military and we want to assume that it's PTSD and it's not.
Mhm.
Did he ever tell you about his background, his upbringing, his childhood, any of his trauma?
He did. Not anything in depth, but abandoned as a child, no father in his lifetime, mother worked, Lord only knows how many hours, different sexual stuff that was going on, in the family, in the household. Grew up in a very rough area, very rough neighborhood. Spent a lot of time on the streets before he went into the military. So it was a tough childhood.
So when y'all got back together, the second attempt at this, was therapy or counseling ever mentioned?
We did over the years go to therapy, I think twice. He attended twice, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. But he didn't want to hear anything. But of course, I also couldn't speak up and say, oh, hey, by the way, I've had 3 concussions, right? So yeah, he went 2 times, that was it.
Before y'all got to therapy, and I'm gonna guess you were the one who brought it up. Did you suggest it? Did he tell you not to mention those things, or did you naturally choose not to mention that for your own safety?
No, with him, with that marriage, I just did not mention it. I made that decision myself. My second marriage, it was what goes on in these effing walls stays in these effing walls. So,
How long were you in counseling with the first homeboy, even though he only showed up to two?
I think I did 2 years of counseling back then. Again, no clue about abuse, no clue that everything else that I was experiencing was, emotional, psychological, financial. I didn't understand all of those, the sexual aspect. It was just the physical. And I believe in therapy. I've been with my therapist for, I want to say 8 years, but I believe that therapists are like shoes. You got to keep trying them on until you get the right fit. So the therapist that I had back then, way back then, that was in the 90s, um, they were good. They were fine as much as I knew, but I don't think that domestic violence was as understood as it is now. I don't think it certainly still wasn't even being called PTSD, right? They were still attributing shell shock to our military members, right? They weren't associating PTSD or any type of shell shock to domestic violence victims and survivors. So I think that therapists did the best that they could at that time. But certainly it hadn't gotten me any healing that I needed.
Okay. And it's hard to heal. Guys, you can't heal unless you're honest.
Mhm.
There's no healing without honesty.
Correct.
And so if you don't feel comfortable enough to walk into a therapy session with your spouse, if there's a possibility for you to do it alone, you have to be honest and vulnerable so that they know what they're dealing with and they know how to help you.
Mhm.
It's just that simple.
Mhm.
That's why therapy doesn't work for people because we don't do our part a lot of times. And like Unbreakable said, it's like a shoe. Like you have to find the one that fits. We're
Right.
we're quick to give up so quick. I didn't like that person. They da 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 da. But you have to keep going. You have to want to be healed with your actions and not just your words. So y'all got back together. How long were y'all? You said after the third concussion, you left the first time.
We were, God, we were, oh, you're testing my age now. I'm 55. Come on now.
Girl,
Um,
you look good, girl.
we split up. Let's see, we got married in 90 and we divorced in 90. Yeah, I think it was 96, I think. Um, we had tried here and there. The last attempt was in 90. I think it was 94, 95. He had gotten out of the military, got a full ride scholarship to Johnson and Wales Culinary Arts Academy in Providence, Rhode Island. Um, and I packed up and moved to Providence, Rhode Island. And we were there
Nope,
for,
nope, 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 nope. We ain't riding over that bump. No, ma'am.
I followed a boy.
How? Because I know
Wishful
why I did the
thinking.
things I did.
Wishful, wishful thinking.
That
Still.
hope is a drug.
Mm-hmm. It is. It is.
So now you're way away from your family and anyone you could possibly know.
Mm-hmm.
And you move to Providence, Rhode Island. How long did you survive in Providence?
6 months. Because he had been in the military all that time, I was there was no drug abuse during the military. And when we got to Providence, oh, that's when it was off the rails. It was completely off the rails. I didn't know. At that point I couldn't even spell the word drugs. I know that's an over exaggeration, but that's how little I knew about drugs. Um, and I would say it was about 5 months in, and he had disappeared for 4 days with my car. The only car that we had was mine, and it was
Of course.
in the middle of a blizzard, and I was walking back and forth to work in a blizzard and walking my daughter back and forth to school because she was in kindergarten in a blizzard. I'm like, no, I can't say what I want to say.
I mean, I can bleep it out.
F this. And that was it. And I went back home and divorced him.
Hold up. So
Mm-hmm.
this is year 6 of the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So for 5.5 years, you had no idea. So there was no signs of drugs at all.
No, because in the military, they would get they call it a piss test, right? They would get popped on a piss test if any type of drugs came up in their system. Now, I had already seen how bad the alcohol abuse was, and he had lost rank. He got demoted because of DUIs. He had to spend time in jail because of DUIs. He had to spend time in jail on base because of DUIs. I still had hope. We get caught up and we believe it and we believe it and we believe it. That's where what I talk about now a lot is that's where I look back and realize that had I loved myself more back then, I would not have tolerated that, what. But because my self-esteem was so low and I thought that's as good as I can do, this is as good as it's going to get, I stayed. At least it's somebody.
Boy, y'all hear me say it all the time. Making decisions from insecurities is so dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And I can only speak for myself, and you just confirmed it for you. But that's why I ended up where I was and stayed as long as I did. Yeah. Because I allowed the insecurities to lead my decisions. And you have to, real self-love doesn't tolerate foolishness. It just doesn't.
No.
People can talk about you, say your standards are too high, all these other things. No, your standards are set for the value that you're worth.
Right.
But you got to know the value that you're worth. So homeboy just went bananas. Do you think it was because of all of the demotions and the embarrassment that he suffered in the military that once he got out, he was just ashamed that he turned to drugs? Or how do you even know how that happened?
I don't even know. I think it was always there. It's, he kept that part of it reined in so that he could at least stay in the military for as long as he did. He actually passed in July 4th, 2019. He passed. Drugs and alcohol. Heart attack. Heart just gave out. It never stopped.
God bless him. Well,
God ain't blessing him.
That's tough. That's tough. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So you left 6 months later. You moved back in with your parents.
Moved in with my grandparents for a little while.
Okay. Yeah. You moved in with your grandparents. Now with a child. Did you suffer any religious or any kind of emotional abuse, mental abuse from your grandparents, or was it all just from your parents?
Just from my parents.
So you were safe once you moved back in with your grandparents?
I was.
And so now we're 19/6/25.
Something like that.
And you're starting over. How long before you got into, or were there any relationships between homeboy number 1 and homeboy number 2?
No, there were a few here and there, nothing serious, just dating here and there. But I wanted one. It was still that not feeling secure and worth or worthy, should I say, exactly as I was. I hear this statement a lot, and I cannot stand this statement. I'm looking for my other half. At this day and age, I'm not looking for my other half because I'm not a half. I am an entire whole being. But back then, I still thought, oh, well, I have to have this partner. I have to have a relationship because then I'll be a whole individual. Then I'll be acceptable. But there was just nothing that was very serious. And then it got to a point where I'm like, yeah, I'm just taking a break. I'm just not interested.
So how long before, I can't roll past this speed bump. Seeking validation, because it's just inside of me, seeking validation from outside sources.
Correct.
That's the mindset of looking for a better half, looking for another half, the other half.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be validated and confirmed from someone else because we haven't worked on ourselves and
Mm-hmm.
see how great we are. So whoever
It's
you are right now, whoever you are out there looking to others to validate you, looking to others to compliment you when you walk out the house, you have to tap into who God created you to be, tap into the greatness that you were born with, and start seeking your value. It's not
mm-hmm.
that you don't have it, you just don't know what it is because you haven't looked within. And once we start looking within and find our own power, our own worth, our own everything that creates us and makes us great, unique, and just abundant in all things, we're going to be lost looking for other people to accept us, to say, yeah, you go, girl. Oh, yeah, you got to do. No, you have to have that before you step out of the house.
Right.
So, how long was it from homeboy number one, the dating phase, and the nope? Let me just focus on me. How long was it before you got into a relationship with homeboy number two?
We got divorced in 96 and I met my son's father in 04,
So that's
2004.
8 years, right? It's like 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in that 8 years, did you feel like you had grown mentally, you had matured, you knew kind of what to look for, you were starting to now be
I
confident?
thought so. Had I done any healing? No. I just thought I'm out of that physically abusive relationship, so I'm all better now. See, I'm good now. It's okay. I got out. No clue.
It doesn't work that way.
Mm-mm.
So you spent 8 years. Y'all listen to this. And we're not judging anybody. We're not criticizing anybody. We need you to understand that healing requires work from the self. Because being out, especially for 8 years, you feel like you are confident. You like, okay, you've survived this long without anybody. Let's test the waters now. Let's see. I feel like I can get into something better than what I had. Surely I ain't gonna find that again.
Mm-hmm.
8 years, but 8 years without healing leads us to homeboy number two, who
Yes.
wasn't physically abusive.
Very little.
Very little. Okay. So what was it about him that you were attracted to?
The love bombing right off the bat. He was educated. He had a career. Um, he was a dad. He had established himself. Spoke very well. Um, financially stable. Just kind of like, the Prince Charming, I guess he certainly was not, but kind of the
He checked the
like
boxes.
some of the boxes. Yeah, he checked what I thought I, in a partner. So yeah, little did I know.
Now, was he any kind of, because you mentioned the love bombing,
Mhm.
was he any kind of abusive to you before y'all got married?
So we got together in 04. We got together July of 04. My son was born November of 05, and we did not get married until December of 09.
Okay.
So yeah, he was abusive the entire time.
Were y'all, when did y'all start living together?
We lived together on and off um, up until 08. And 08, we started living together full time.
Before y'all started living together, were there any signs of abusiveness? Did you recognize them?
No,
Okay.
no, because it wasn't the true physical. There were bruises on my wrists so that I couldn't get away. so that I would stand there and I would take it. That was the extent of the physical abuse. Now, there was sexual abuse later on that caused physical damage, but that was the extent, just the bruises on the wrists. I didn't know that standing in the doorway and blocking me was abuse. I didn't know that locking me in rooms or locking me out of rooms was abuse. I didn't know that the controlling all of the money and not letting me have any money was abuse. I didn't know that the disappearing for days on end and leaving me with a brand new infant and all four of your children, well, you're just, Lord only knows where. I didn't understand the manipulation. I didn't understand the toxicity. I didn't know I was being abused the entire time.
It was uncomfortable. You didn't like it, but did you think in that moment in time that it was better than what you had already experienced?
I knew, yes, I felt that it was better in some respects, but I knew that it wasn't okay. Now let me add into this, also an alcoholic and a methamphetamine addict.
All right.
So I didn't even know for the first 2 years that most or a lot of the behaviors could be attributed to the methamphetamine. I didn't understand that. Now, once the methamphetamine was gone years later, okay, the behaviors still continued. They were just, a little more incognito, but that was like the first 2 years of our relationship, but I had no clue he was using. I don't do drugs. I don't know drugs. I didn't know what I was looking at.
So in that time, the alcohol was present. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So during the love bomb phase, was the alcohol present then?
Mm-hmm.
Did you recognize that he was abusing alcohol then, or did you just feel like it was?
No, because we weren't living together at that time. So it was, I was in my 30s, and oh, we're gonna get together. Oh, we're gonna go to a party, or oh, we're hanging out, we're having a couple of drinks. Like, no, it whenever he saw me drink, that's how often I drank. And that's kind of like what I tell people. It's like when you see me drink now, even now, that's how often I drink. It's very seldom. So to me, it was like, oh, we're just partying, we're just hanging out partying. So I had no clue
Unbreakable. This is a lot.
on that. Girl, there's so much more.
I just want to say, y'all need to take a deep breath, go grab some water, inhale, exhale, count to 3, whatever you need to do. Because for you to go through 8 years of fresh air, really, of just being able to breathe and find you and figure out who you are and work. Because I mean, even still, 25 is still so young when you look at life. And
Yeah.
so many people, we don't know who we are or what we're supposed to be doing or who we're supposed to become at 25. So you're still so young. And then you have this 8-year stint of really discovering things and going through the trials and tribulations of being single, being a mom, not knowing what to do, but you can make your own decisions on your own terms.
Mm-hmm.
Only to find yourself 8 years later back into another situation that's in its own right just as damaging as the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not going to speed over the fact that you said physical abuse, although very little. When people aren't slapped, punched, kicked, cut, hit with something, shot, they don't feel like the word abuse is light enough to apply to their situation.
Correct.
And they almost feel ashamed to say, I was abused. Well, what did he do? Oh, he held my wrists. Okay, anybody preventing you from leaving on your own free will,
Mm-hmm.
that's entrapment.
Taking keys so you can't leave.
So you can't leave. And
That's
did y'all have
abuse.
2 cars?
He had cars. Yes, he had two. They were his cars. He had 2 cars, but he kept keys.
So you didn't have your own car this time.
Mm-mm. I had
Or
totaled my car. He had bought me a car, but it was his car.
were you working at the time?
No, my son, whole nother story, medical issues with my son. I was working right up until my son was born.
Whose decision was it for you to not work after your son was born?
Initially he tried that.
And how did that sound?
It didn't work. That didn't work out so well. I was, I'm a worker bunny. I went back to work.
Because I just wanted to bring that up because it's real. That's another, I need y'all to understand. That's another tactic. It sounds all cute and good. Baby, you don't have to work another day in your life. You can stay home, just take care of the kids. I'll worry about the money. I'll do all of these things. You just be a mom and a wife, and you don't have to work for anybody else a day in your life. It sounds real cute.
Was it Janet Jackson? Control.
Right? That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do I believe that there are people out there genuine who actually love their spouses and says, I don't want you to do anything except for take care of yourself, take care of our family. I'm going to take care of you too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I wholeheartedly believe that those men and women are out there because let's be real. There are some women who actually go out, make all the money, and they're like, babe, I just want you to stay home with the kids. I just want you to, because they have this agreement, they have this balance of roles.
Mm-hmm.
And those people are out there. But you know, if that's not your person, you always, like Unbreakable said, she always knew it wasn't right. And you know if it's not right. You have the intuition, you have the gut feeling, you're questioning yourself. If you have to question yourself in your head, it ain't right. You should never have to question yourself. It just ain't right. So I didn't want people, number one, to think that you had to have like a broken anything or lacerations or all that. That's just extreme severe abuse or severe physical violence as they deem it in paperwork and things in statistics. But in reality, anytime someone puts your hands on you in a way that you do not like or agree to keep you from doing something that you have decided to do or not do, that's abuse.
And it doesn't even have to be a physical touch, like putting their hands on you. I was born and raised in California. In 2008, we moved to Texas. I'm in Texas now. And not getting into politics, Texas is a very right to bear arms state. And so when we got to Texas, the abuser really bought into that. And before I left, it was up to 7 firearms, legal and illegal. But the abuser used to pull it out, point it at me, and cock it at me, or set it down on a table in front of me so that it was pointing at me. He never laid a hand on me in those situations, right? That's abuse. I would be afraid, I would be terrified, and it would be turned and manipulated into, well, what's wrong with you? We have the right to bear arms. We have the right, like this is Texas, like everybody has this. What's wrong with you? All of that was abuse. He never laid a hand on me in any of those situations, but the threat of violence, the threat of being unsafe, the threat of having your rights taken away, your safety taken away, your space taken away. Like, people need to understand it's not just the laying a hand on you, taking away your finances, controlling everything, taking away your freedoms to go here or go there, or make a decision on, I want to cut my hair. Like, every bit of that is abuse. And that's where I agree with you. So many people are like, oh, well, they never laid a hand on me. So, I hear that all the time when I do interviews. Well, my story's not as bad as yours. Oh, no, 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 no,
We're not comparing trauma here.
no. Trauma is trauma. There is nothing that is worse or better or not as bad. Like, no, trauma is trauma and trauma is valid. Everyone's trauma is valid. So, yes, to reiterate what you're saying, it doesn't have to be a hand. There's so many other forms that they will pull us in and suck us in and keep us under control. And in my household, it was behave. There were so many tactics that were used to make me behave. It was all every bit of it abuse.
Did you ever in the relationship feel like you respected him at any point?
I respected him in his career. That is the only thing to this day that I will ever give him, is that he is phenomenal in his career. He is very talented. He has a natural God-given talent for what he does. He's very good at it. I respected that. That was it.
Had he ever verbally demanded your respect in the relationship?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can laugh about it now, but yes.
How did those conversations go?
It was always, the manipulation of, I provide for this family and I do all of these things for this family and you need to give me the respect that I'm due. Okay, well, dude, first of all, I made twice as much money as you did. I was the one paying all of the bills.
This is before your son was born, correct?
No, this is after. Like, what respect am I supposed to give you? You don't lead. You don't take care of any of our children. I do. Like, what respect am I supposed to give you? Here they do. In my particular situation, I wasn't given any other choice other than to take control of everything. We would have lost everything. If I hadn't taken control of the finances, we would have lost everything. Now, mind you, making double what he was making, every payday I was going down to pennies in my account, while he's got thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in his account and won't give me anything towards the household bills. What is there to respect? But you demand it. I need to respect your time. I need to respect your choices. I need to respect that you need time away. I need to respect that you want to do this, you want to buy that, you want this, you want that. Okay, okay. And I did. It was okay, okay.
Who paid the car notes?
I did.
I figured that was a loaded question. I just needed people to not let that one slide by. They had 2 cars in his name, right?
Oh, at that time we had 4 cars. No, we had 3 cars and 2 motorcycles because he wanted all of them.
Were you paying notes on all of them?
He paid for his motorcycles because I
And
wouldn't pay them. But I paid the insurance. I paid the insurance. I paid the mortgages. I paid my stepdaughter's tuition to Baylor. I paid all of the utilities. I paid for everything. But I needed to, here we go. I needed to respect him because he worked for the city at that point. So his insurance was way better than mine. So I needed to respect him because he paid for our medical insurance.
So you have a daughter who's now 14,
She was 13 when my son was born. Yeah.
a brand new baby,
Brand new baby.
and 4 of his children from previous
Yeah.
relationships. Now, did they live with y'all, or was it one of those back and forth situations, joint custody?
They did for a period of time. Looking back now, he gave them back to their mom, he said, because she was going crazy without them. Looking back now, his meth had gotten so far out of control, he couldn't take care of them.
Y'all, that's a lot.
It's a whole lot.
That's a lot of suppressed pressure. There's no space for self-care here.
Zero.
There's no space for self, because when he's not demanding her to fulfill whatever needs he wants her to fulfill, there are 6 children needing her to show up every single day with the right energy, despite how he treats her, and be mom and stepmom and a better stepmom, or the best stepmom you can be, so that you don't catch the flack of that because you're only stepmom.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people realize the pressure that comes along when you're in a blended family, and the person who dubs themselves the leader of the family is abusive. Was he ever controlling and manipulative and abusive towards any of the children? I thought so.
Yeah.
I thought so. What did that look like? Because I know what it looked like in my experience, but what did that look like from your point of view and your experience?
So his 4 children were girls. And so for the girls, it was just very controlling. Be quiet, stay out of my way, smile pretty. Um, there wasn't love, there wasn't interaction, there wasn't hugs. They were objects. With my son being the only boy out of 6 kids, he's the one who suffered the physical. Yeah. So the girls, there were a couple of times that, 1 or 2 of the girls would get smacked. But the girls learned very quickly to be quiet and stay out of the way. Stay, behind the curtain.
Smacked like in the face, smacked, or smacked like?
Mm-hmm.
How old was your son when he first started abusing him?
5.
And why was he abusive? What did your son, quote unquote, do that triggered his reaction?
Didn't clean his room or got in trouble at school or some piddly childhood reason. As my son got older, there was a situation where my son didn't want to do something. I don't even recall what it was, but my son kind of backtalked to him, and he took him. I've talked about this online. He took him up against the wall off of his feet. Um, that was the worst. There were bruises constantly, and my son is very, very fair skinned and very easily bruised. And this baby would have black and blue for weeks at a time, up and down his back, down his legs. Yeah, he was the one who used to get it. And then as he got older, it was the punch in the chest to make him lose his breath.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Did anybody at the school ever notice anything or ever bring anything to your attention?
Yeah. The time that he was choked up against the wall, he had gone to school and talked to his counselor about it. The counselor reported it. CPS came out and CPS interviewed all 3 of us together.
We're not rolling over this. No.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we've heard stories about how police have handled situations for women on the call outs, but this one's new. And in their minds or in their protocol, they think that suspecting abuse is safe to interview everyone with the abuser as if honesty is going to be shared. So just for the listeners who might just tuned in, they might be a little slow, they ain't picking all the pieces up. How did that conversation go?
Everything's fine. No, that didn't happen. No. Oh no, everything's fine.
And who was saying that?
All of us. We followed his lead. Because of course, we knew CPS was coming. I don't know about any other state, but in Texas, they like call you and tell you, hey, we're coming. So we knew CPS was coming. And so we had both been told what was to be discussed and what was not to be discussed, and what goes on in this effing house stays in this effing house. So we were programmed. We knew exactly what our script was that we were allowed to talk about, and what we weren't allowed to talk about.
And your son is how old at the time?
He, at that time, he was in high school. So I think he was a freshman. So I want to say he was about 13, 14, something like that.
That's awful.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of emotional weight that he had to endure during that entire interview process, not break character, to not break down, to not let anything boil up and roll down his cheek.
I take that back. He was in junior high. He wasn't in high school until after we were divorced. He was in junior high, so even younger.
12 or 13.
Yeah, he was even younger now.
Y'all, it's not just the person who's being abused, their thing. It's not that their thinking is the only thing that's backward. It's not that their decisions are the only ones that are backwards. Because even when the appropriate, quote unquote, people are called to investigate, the protocol is bass backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine too that even if they did separate y'all and had y'all in different rooms, there was probably still going to be so much fear and anxiety to let the truth slip out. You might not have even shared it then.
Correct.
But the fact that you're not given the opportunity to make that decision on your own is trash.
Mm-hmm.
Had you ever once, because I didn't ask you for first homeboy, but we're going to go over both of them. Had you ever once thought about calling the police, or have you ever actually called the police on either one of them?
I called the police on the first abuser one time after we had split up, because he showed up drunk, of course, to my place where I was living, and he was trying to steal the license plates off my car so that I could drive it. So at one point I had a restraining order on him. I had never called the police on the second one until we were separated here and there.
Because of stalking?
I did for stalking. They didn't do anything. I did because I found what appeared to be drug baggies in my garage. They didn't find anything. I did once when the very first gun came into the house, and we had split up. And again, back and forth, living together, not living together. But he had moved out and he had left a gun behind, and I didn't want it there. And so I called the cops, hey, come and get this. I don't want it here. That was about it. That was it. And then I was punished for all of those. I was punished. I was told how wrong I was, how I didn't love him, how I wanted to destroy his career, how I only cared about his money. It's all the manipulation and the brainwashing.
Isn't it funny how your response to grasp a speck of safety and security is the destruction of them, not their actions.
No.
Your response to their actions
Right.
for your safety and sanity is their destruction.
Right.
You had mentioned when we first got to Second Homeboy that there was sexual abuse.
Yes.
Were y'all married
Yep.
and you're living together
Yep.
and you've had his child? So for the people who don't understand, how can there be sexual abuse in a marriage?
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I've been talking to a lot of victims and survivors recently. We all have the same mindset. We were all kind of conditioned to believe that, well, because I'm the spouse, I have to submit, especially as the female. Because I'm the wife, it's my job, it's my responsibility. So I'll just submit. No means no, regardless of marital status, regardless of relationship status. My no was never respected. And something that I struggled with too, and this is something we don't talk about. We might have to do a whole nother episode on this. Something that I struggled with was I didn't like that. But there were times when I knew that I would get no other affection unless I gave into that. So there were times where it was like, okay, well, today it's okay because I need that affection and attention. But tomorrow it's not okay. Like I don't want that. I don't need that. That's okay. It's completely okay. No is not this blanket, no means no all the time. I can make a decision any day of the week that I want to make a decision. And if on Monday I'm okay, but on Wednesday I'm like, no, no still means no. And if your no is not respected and your no is overstepped, it is still, at least here in Texas, there are laws against marital rape. And that's what it is. When you say no, that's what it is. I had said no too many times to where there was one particular time where I had continued to say no, but it wasn't happening. And so my insides were ripped open. And I had to go to the hospital and have an emergency surgery to repair what was done on my insides. So it doesn't matter that we were married. It doesn't matter that, I have some sort of obligation, whatever you want to call it, sexual obligation, religious obligation, whatever you want to call it. I have zero obligation to anybody. I know that now, but at that time, we believe it. I believed it. I had an obligation to submit. I had an obligation to be obedient. I had an obligation to give the head of my household exactly what he wanted, regardless of how it made me feel. It doesn't matter what your relationship status is. No means no. Everyone has a right to say
no. But in the minds of them, it's no longer your body, it's theirs.
Correct.
That's what I heard.
Property, yeah.
And as their wife, just like you said, you're supposed to be the only source that they can get this kind of need met. And because of that, regardless of the fact that your affectionate needs are not met anywhere at any time, you're still supposed to just lay there and take it.
And if you don't, somebody else will. Of course, you hear all of that, right? Or that's why I went and did that because yeah.
Man, It's I had to ask that question because it's the conversations are so important. Because someone asked me, why would they had watched another interview and they're like, why would someone have a kid by someone who's abusive? And it was a guy, it was a man who asked me that. I said, what people don't understand in those situations is it's not that that woman is just having kids all willy-nilly because she wants to do it. It's not that she's having sex because she wants to do it. Now, like you said, there are opportunities for you to actually want it and desire it, even if it's just because, for whatever reason it is, there are opportunities to have that desire there. But a lot of times, I can't speak for only mentally and emotionally abusive relationships, but I imagine it's just the same. The male or the spouse in that situation is demanding that this happens. Otherwise, you're going to receive equal opposite reactions, however that comes across in their brain.
Right.
They're really petty people. If you don't do this for me, I'm not going to do this for you. If you do this to me, I'm going to do this to you, and it's going to be so much worse than what you did.
Yes. Yes.
And a lot of times, people lay down with their partner simply because they're in survival mode. It's just like, I still want my life. I still want to be here, even though I'm not living, I'm just existing. I still want to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to survive. And in this game, the way I survive is to let them win. Isn't that crazy? The person who thinks that they're the leader, that they're this dominating force, is being let do all of these things because we're surviving.
Mm-hmm.
Blessed assurance. Ciao.
It got, in the end, it started getting really bad the last couple of years. And I would literally stay up late in the living room on the couch watching TV until I heard him snoring. And then I knew I was safe. And then I would fall asleep on the couch because then he can't roll over. I'm not in there. I'm safe out here. It's less likely that he's going to bother me out here. That kind of started becoming one of my protection mechanisms for myself. But I knew at least once a week, once every other week, like, I'm going to have to go in there and be in there, or I'm going to suffer the repercussions.
I have to backtrack to the time that he raped you and you had to go to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Let's all understand, we've all seen ER, we've all seen Grey's Anatomy, we've all seen some sort of medical doctor show. And in those rape episodes, SVU, whatever you're watching, there's always clear evidence that the person who's examining knows what rape looks like. And for you to have emergency surgery, it's obvious. Were there any conversation?
No. So I knew that something was wrong, and we're talking about, we're going to get kind of graphic. In between the front and the back, there's a very thin wall. And that wall is what was damaged. And it wasn't until a couple of days later that, like, something wasn't right. Okay, there's contamination going on both ways. There's this pain that's kind of coming out of nowhere. Mind you, up until that point, it was all very swollen. And so we didn't know right off the bat what the extent of the damage was. So I started going to my doctor, and I thought I had hemorrhoids. But it was so severe that I couldn't sit down. and I couldn't drive. I couldn't stand. I couldn't move. Like for 2 weeks, I went through this, just dire pain. Um, and finally I went back to my doctor again and I'm like, look, nothing's helping. Because I just told them, I think I have hemorrhoids. That's all I knew. I didn't know exactly what was going on. She said, you need to go to the surgeon. So I went to the surgeon. He did an exam. He said, I need you in first thing in the morning. So there was no rape kit that could have been done. And there was no bodily fluid. There was no bodily fluid that could have been tested. It was a very whole nother conversation. Whole nother conversation. It wasn't your normal sexual act, put it that way.
So because there was no bodily fluid, even though the trauma was so severe, even though these are trained professionals to recognize what trauma looks like in a rape victim, the conversation wasn't had because simply there was no bodily fluid.
No, the conversation wasn't had because initially I didn't even know. I just knew there was this dire pain that I was having. I went to my GP. My GP said, it sounds like hemorrhoids. Based on where the pain was coming from, it sounds like hemorrhoids. So for almost 2 weeks, I was treated for severe hemorrhoids.
So then you go in, you get the examination. Is this an outpatient procedure? Or
They did do outpatient. Yeah. I was in the hospital for a couple hours. They stitched me up, sewed me up, and then sent me home.
And how did you get home?
Him.
Okay. So after the surgery, they come back, they tell you, okay, the surgery went well. He's in the room with you, homeboy?
They talked to him. Yeah, I was still coming out of general anesthesia.
So you don't know if any conversation was had with homeboy to say, hey, this just looks. And they didn't call you, like, because it's hard for me to wrap my mind around me being a medical professional and I see something as severe as this and it's obvious it's not hemorrhoids. How do I not call you back when you're clearly able to communicate? I don't understand how this conversation is just not had. Hey, yeah, your wife suffered from a rectal tear, blah, blah, blah. We stitched her up. She can't sit. She can't sit for so-and-so weeks. Make sure she has this, only this and that. At no point I can't believe that there's nobody on that operating table that nursed on you, that performed surgery on you. Nobody thought in their mind that this needs to be further investigated.
Yeah. I even took it to court. I took it when we were going through our divorce. I brought it up in court and my attorney asked him about my surgery. And the abuser said, what surgery? I don't know anything about any surgery.
Was he drunk when this happened? Not the surgery, but the act.
Oh, I don't know. I don't recall. I don't recall.
That's bananas.
Yep. To this day, I have medical side effects from it that I live with.
That's insane.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what's got me so paused right now. The fact that it happened or the fact that it was never investigated for happening. I feel like I just feel like they're even across the board. Like this does not make any sense.
It was not Physical bruises. It was not facial bruises. It was not broken bones. It was not cuts, visible cuts and scars and wounds. It was a very sensitive topic, and I didn't say anything. So there was nothing to be investigated. When I realized, once the doctors told me what it was, I knew what it was from. I knew exactly what it was from. But understand, up until that point, for that 2-week period, I will give birth to a 30-pound baby before I go through what that pain was. I didn't know until I got to the surgeon. My doctor finally sent me to my surgeon. My surgeon's like, I know exactly what this is, and you're coming in tomorrow morning and having surgery.
But how do you not have a question if you know exactly what it is?
He knew what the wound was, he knew what the trauma was, but yeah, how would they not pursue it? Or I don't know. I don't know. There's more wild and crazy things out there. You know, maybe they were just thinking it's wild and crazy. I have no clue. I have no idea. I was in dire pain. Just do something about it.
Fix it. Please fix it.
Mhm.
Now I'm about to get real personal, and you can absolutely avoid this answer.
Oh, go, girl. Go.
So that happened, and you're at home for 2 weeks. In
Mhm.
that 2-week period, did he attempt to have sex with you?
Oh, hell no. Oh no. The pain was so severe. I was writhing on the floor. No. But he left me alone to just deal with it.
And there you are, still having to be mom.
Hmm. Still working. I was remote. Thank God I was working remote. But yeah, still having to work my 40-hour work week. Yeah. Tears streaming down my face. Hmm.
So you said that there was back and forth between this relationship as well.
Hmm.
Did that back and forth happen after he decided to give the kids back to their mom?
Yeah. Yeah. It happened up until 2009 when we got married. Yeah.
And then you got married in 2009.
Mhm.
And how long did y'all stay married before you left for good?
2000, my out date's January 5th, 2019.
So you were with homeboy how long?
15 years.
I just wanted to make sure that you said it because I know somebody forgot that we talked about this at the beginning of this conversation.
15 years.
And the last 10 was without his other 4 children.
Correct.
How did you stay for 10 years after you watched him just give his children back?
I believed it. I believed him. I was the I was the person who, when mom didn't have a working vehicle, I would go pick her and the girls up and take them to doctor's appointments. I was that stepmom. I would go grocery shopping for them. I would go pick up the girls so that she could have a break. Whatever. I was that stepmom. Um, so seeing how she was struggling financially, now looking back, understanding why, because he wasn't paying child support, seeing how she was struggling, I believed him when he said that, oh, she's going crazy without them. I believed him.
I have to ask, how did they, because it's 4 girls
Hmm.
and they were living like up until the time where he quote unquote sent them back, they were living with y'all pretty much full time.
They were.
because this is almost unheard of, or some would say this is a flag. How do four daughters end up living with their father and not their biological mother?
Threats
From the father.
from him to the mom.
When
He
someone
tried to do he tried to do the same thing to me. I'm gonna take your son away from you. You're crazy, you're insane. Now, not trying to say anything bad about, their mother, but she wasn't as educated. She didn't have as much of an understanding of certain things. With me, I don't know why he used to love to brag to people that I was a legal beagle. That's what he used to call me. She's such a legal beagle. Just ask her. I don't know why. Stuff sticks with me. I read, I research. So I was a little more educated as far as that was concerned. She wasn't as much. I believed that she gave them up to him initially in the divorce. Come to find out later, no, he had threatened her. All of these different things. I believed it. I believed all of it. I wanted to believe all of it. I did believe all of it. This was that Prince Charming. Like he was the one. He checked all of the boxes and then more for a very short period of time. But once the gold polish started rubbing off, I was already hooked.
And so as your son got older, did the abuse get worse, or did it kind of stay about the same terrible that it already was?
Once he was off meth, it eased up a little bit. And then once it was, we split up in 2019, 18, 17. I would say it would be like 2015, 2016. It started getting bad again.
Even with him off the drugs?
Oh yeah. Yeah, there was still alcohol. Real heavy. I mean, this guy would get up and drink, I don't know how big that is. The vodka bottles? That would be gone by 10 a.m. every day. Gets up at 5 and it's gone by 10. Or, he's got to go to work and, half of it's gone before he goes to work at 7. Um, yeah, it was
High
just
functioning alcoholic, high functioning.
extremely high functioning.
Because you says you respected his career, and to respect his career means he has to show up and do his god doggone thing.
Very high functioning. So that's why so much of what went on, especially in my household, could be kept on the down low because people only saw the outside of it. They only saw that he does have this amazing career. He's so good at what he does. When he speaks, especially about work, he's so eloquent, he's so articulate, and like you're just in awe of hearing him talk. Nobody knew because that's all they saw.
Have you and your son ever had conversations about what your son experienced?
Yes. Yeah. When I got out in 2019, right off the bat, of course, my son didn't want to hear anything. He loved his dad, daddy's boy. He didn't want to choose sides because he was old enough to choose sides. He didn't want to choose sides. I never made him. But as I started going through my healing, really making those deep dives, I had to go to my son and be like, I wasn't the best mom. I get that. I made mistakes, but I'm going to do better. And I modeled for him healthy behavior. I modeled for him healthy choices, healthy boundaries, communication. And as that all started falling into place, like he was opening up more on, Mom, this is what's going on. Mom, this is how I'm feeling. This is what went on. I don't like that that's what went on because it was a 50-50, 1 week on, 1 week off. So we had to go over there. But the more that I gave him space and the more that I gave him a safe space to be heard, be validated, not be told that his feelings were wrong, the more he opened up and recognized just how bad it was over there. And so when he was 16, I think he was 16, he finally stood up to him and said, either you're going to stop talking bad about my mom and have a better relationship with me, him talking to his father, or I don't want anything to do with you. And the following weekend, he was supposed to get picked up and nobody ever showed. 2.5 years. Abandoned him. So for the last 2.5 years of his childhood life until he was 18 and graduated, he had been abandoned. And to this day, there's really no relationship there.
Does your son go to therapy?
Trying to get him there. He's still young and, figuring things out. But he, at least, I thank the good Lord that he at least got the last 6 years with me in therapy. I did take him to therapy for a period of time. Whole legal argument over that, so he didn't get to continue.
Wait a minute. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. You throwing too many speed bumps out here and you just rolling right over them. I refuse. Stop.
My divorce decree and child support order states that we were to make all decisions mutually, with the exception of therapy. And I asked for that. I wanted the sole decision making on whether my child would go to therapy or not. And I won that. I won a whole lot of things. But anyways, that was one of the things that I was adamant about. And so I got my son into therapy, found him a really great therapist. Son really clicked with him, but somebody was manipulating and, just brainwashing and talking him out of, and then telling me, well, he didn't want to go. I have him this week because it was week on, week off, and he was supposed to go every week. He's like, he didn't want to go, so I didn't take him. Okay, let me try, the week that he's with me. Well, dad said there's something wrong with that therapist and I shouldn't go to that therapist. So yes, manipulation and control, brainwashing that was going on. So I was not able to get my son back to therapy.
That's so disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
But it has to be said. It has to be discussed. It has to be talked about, because I think that people understand that the child is affected. But until you can see a picture of the movie that's actually happening, you don't understand the severity. Because I get it. There's still people who hold on to that therapy is for punks and all these other things. Like, if that's your mindset, you on the wrong station anyways. You shouldn't even be listening this far. But if you don't understand that therapy is, it's like water. It's like air. In all honesty, whether you're in a good season of your life or a not so good season of your life, you need some professional counseling to help you navigate the stressors, the highs and the lows, and how to keep those things ebb and flow throughout everything.
Right.
And if a child has witnessed the abuse and experienced it, it shouldn't be ripped from them their opportunity to heal because of someone else's unhealed traumas.
Right.
But I believe that he's going to come back around. I believe that you're on the right track. Like you said, you're just showing what love is, what healthy relationships look like, how they feel, not how they sound, how they feel and how they look. And I believe that that will get him back. I believe that that'll get him back on track.
He's already, I mean, I'm so proud of him. He's young. He's young. He's just a baby still. He's just my baby. He's young. But the 6 years since getting out and him seeing mom in therapy has had such a profound impact on him. He is so much more empathetic. He does understand and oftentimes sets and maintains boundaries, right? He does stand up to this person and tell them, that's BS what you're saying. Somebody will play the guilt treatment, text him or try to leave him a voicemail, play the guilt treatment. You could call your dad every now and again. And he's like, I could say the same thing for you. Like he's like snapping back, like he's not falling for it anymore. He sees it, he recognizes it. So while no, my baby's not in therapy, I hope that he does one day, but he at least in us modeling that behavior, that healthy behavior to them, they pick up on it. So I'm grateful that he has picked up on what I've been learning in my healing because I'm treating him with respect and dignity and showing him healthy communication. I'm showing him what boundaries look like. So he's learning, even at those later teenage years, it's still been enough of an impact that I feel better, that he's in a better spot now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's beautiful. And that's to attest to your healing and your strength and your desire and commitment to do the work on yourself.
Right.
And it's going to overflow as it has already to so many people and just be the example that they need. And so I think that that's amazing.
Yeah.
So we about to wrap this thing up. Y'all all right? Because it was bumpy there. It was shaky. Like I feel like the bridge narrowed. It was ice on the road. There was a lot going on. Yeah. Woo! But my last question for you, the beautiful Unbreakable, is what is confidence to you? How would you define it? And how does that feel to you now?
What is confidence? What would I define as confidence? It's funny, I was just having this conversation with one of my employees today. Confidence to me, for me, is being comfortable in my own skin. It may not always be comfortable. I may not always like the look that I see or what I see in the mirror looking back at me, but knowing at the end of the day that I have done the best that I could, knowing at the end of the day that I'm a better person than I was the day before, knowing at the end of the day that I freaking love myself. That's the only confidence that I need. It's not arrogance. It's not, I think I'm better than anyone else. It's, I've worked hard to get where I'm at. And I'm pretty damn proud of where I'm at. Do I have a long way to go? Heck yeah. But through all of the healing, I know that I will never go back. I will never make those mistakes again. I will never overlook a red flag again. I will never fall. I'll fall for something. We all fall for something every day. But boy, let me tell you, it's going to stand out. Something's going to stand out real quick and you're going to be gone. Bye-bye. Peace out. That's confidence to me.
Well, y'all heard it first. Yeah, I don't even have a microphone with mic drop. She said what she said, doggone. I cannot thank you. We cannot thank you enough for taking the time out for you to come share your experiences, share your love, shine your light and grace us with your presence, with your resilience, with your strength, with your courage, with your ability and your tenacity to continue to become and not allow someone else's buffoonery to stifle who your light is supposed to be and who your light is supposed to touch. Thank you, the magnificent Unbreakable, for taking a moment to be with us on this day. We over here, she's showing y'all how to do it. Overcome the insecurities, rise above these insecurities, release the burdens of shame and guilt, and revive your God-given power, purpose, and passion. The confidence way. Y'all know what I say. She gone.